Hi, everyone. Good morning. I like it. How did we sleep? Did you guys go to karaoke? Did you sing properly? Did you guys just say no? I like honest people. I like honest people. So yesterday we saw pledges. There were giveaways, especially to those persons online. Hi, good morning. So good to have you. We had thought-provoking sessions, and so now we look forward to day two. Again, everyone, welcome to day two of the annual convention, of course, brought to you by Triple CU in association with Jakulo. I heard some people say J. Cole, then I heard some people say Jakul, and I think Jakul sounds cool. So again, allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Dr. Terry Carell Reed. You can call me Terry Carell, TK, everything is fine. And I have the honor of serving you in the capacity of host over the next couple of days. Now, just before we jump into our first general session, just a couple of things that I want to remind us of. There was someone who lost, listen to this, there's someone who lost a pair of glasses. If you are that person, we have secured your glasses at the secretariat. So just go over to the secretariat and identify yourself. We'll ensure that you get your glasses right away. Please remember that the networking/coffee break session that takes place after the general session will take place in the exhibitors hall, not the main one, but the one in Salon 4. It's best that you go see what is there because there will be a massive giveaway from that exhibitor hall on Wednesday. So that is where the coffee break will be taking place. Again, we just want to remind you that we will be facilitating local visits to the credit unions here. So go and sign up. Yesterday, you had to sign up downstairs at the registration desk. This time around, you just have to go to the Jakul booth, sign up so that we can give you the necessary information. The shuttle leaves at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning, and it will take you to the Trelawney Credit Union, First Regional Credit Union, as well as Gateway Credit Union. For those of you leaving the island and you need to do your COVID-19 tests, depending on where it is you are connecting, those tests will be done in the disco on Tuesday, the 21st of June at 4 p.m. And you can collect those COVID-19 forms downstairs at the registration desk. So let us get started. Are we ready? Are we ready? All right. So yesterday we spoke about, being operational, being functional, being servant leaders. We looked at growing our membership. We looked at targeting the right audience. We looked at communicating properly, contextually, with clarity when you're talking to your audience. And we closed off by saying we can't do any of these things unless we take care of our all right, live well, lead well, and excel. There's another area that we have to pay attention to, and we have to ask, what is the credit union's role? How many of us know how many SDGs there are? Near, 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 near. How many are there? 17. There are 17 sustainable development goals. It is important for us to know this because if we are to thrive and survive going forward, we need to now operate and function with these things in mind. Now, it also means that you have a role to play in your communities to ensure that they are being respectful and mindful of our environment and climate. But what does that look like? Ladies and gentlemen, we have the perfect person who is going to open up our general session. He is Mr. Orville Gray, and he is, for me, Captain Planet. May I call you Captain Planet? For those of us who are old enough, I did common entrance. How many of us did common entrance? All right, so you guys know Captain Planet. He's our hero. Gonna take pollution down to zero. Okay, I don't want to make it very hard for for Mr. Orville Gray to come on after I sing. But it is important. His role as an environmentalist is important because now he has the insights to help you make better decisions as you impart and educate your customers and your clients. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking about credit unions and their role amidst a changing climate is Mr. Orville Gray. Please make him welcome.
Morning, everyone. How are we today? Sure? Well, I don't know. I can live up to Carol's Captain Planet hero, but I'll certainly try. Everyone had a good breakfast? Sure? No. The room kind of sound like it was still sleeping. We're still sleeping? See, half of the room is awake and the other half of the room is, still not with us. All right, we're gonna get through a conversation today around climate change. How many of us have heard the term before? Everybody? Sure? What's climate change? Changing climate. Let me say this. I am from the classroom. So expect to get a classroom type of atmosphere today. So I will ask questions. I'm going to walk the floor. We're going to have a conversation. I'm not going to stand up here and lecture. And you're not going to sit down there and fall asleep on me at 8:30, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, right? Love it? I like her. All right. So we're going to talk about this. Let me ask a question. How many of you have been talking about climate change in the credit unions? Let me see hands. All right, I think I see about 6 or 7, 8. All right, we're going there. How many of you have talked about climate change at home? All right, more hands up. How many of you have talked about climate change with your customers? Right, so now we get less hands. All right, let's see if we can have a conversation around what it is. How many of you had a talk on climate change? Seriously? Not even half of the room? All right. So when we talk about climate change in the Caribbean, this is the Caribbean that most people know about, right? Everybody flying in from outside the Caribbean. This is something what they're looking forward to. Nice, sunny sky, blue sky, no clouds as such. Maybe have nice white sand beach, some palm trees, and relaxation, right? What is Caribbean like for you? Wait, I hear somebody say hot. Who say hot? Hot. Sunshine. What else? So I guess some seaweed. No. That's not Caribbean. Well, it's coming here. So we're going to have to deal with it. Sun, sea, and sand. That's the sad part of the Caribbean dialogue, though. Beaches. Rain. Who said rain? Rain. Hurricane. Natural disasters. You know what? I'm going to leave you with that one. All right. How many have seen something like this in the talks that you've had? 1 or 2 persons said they've had a conversation, right? So when you hear about climate change, one of the big conversations you hear is the conversation around the temperature, the increasing temperature, right? And earlier I heard somebody said hot. All right? It's getting hot, right? Yeah? Oh, it's getting hotter. Somebody got A in school, It is getting hotter. That's the trend. There's no question about it. That's what the science says. It is getting hotter. We are more than 1 degree warming since 1850. How many have heard the 1.5 to Stay Alive campaign from island states? 1. Who else? No one else? All right, a few persons have heard it. We've been pushing this angle of no more than 1.5 degrees increase. Because we're saying that we are already experiencing climate change in the region. If what we're experiencing now is this bad, what can it look like at 1.5? That's where we don't want to be, right? But the projection, anybody knows where the projection currently is? 3? All right, somebody said 3. Anyone else want to take a guess? How much? 3.5, the projection for temperature. So we are somewhere between 2.8 and 3.5. So if we are just over 1, around 1.1 or thereabout. And the projection is 2.8 to 3.5. Think about what we're experiencing now. What would 2.8 look like or feel like? Right? My good friend said that we're getting hotter. I'm sure when you go outside, it's hot, right? So I came this morning and I was like, okay, how should I dress? What's the plan? You come in the Caribbean, we say, unfortunately in the Caribbean, we kind of have a dress code that mirrors temperate countries. We don't dress island-like. You go to the Pacific, it's a different case. But in the Caribbean, we suit and tie up. That's our feel for it, right? So we're now sitting inside a well air-conditioned room in the Caribbean. But the people coming from outside into the Caribbean want to go and chill on the beach and get some cool breeze, right? So why are we inside here? Go again? All right. So that's a projection. And if we're feeling hot or hotter now, 2.8 is definitely not something that an island state wants to experience. I'm not even getting into what that means for things like, for instance, drought or hurricanes. Just looking at the temperature increase. Then we have this one. The projected carbon dioxide emissions. Because we know this is one of the biggest drivers for the increase in temperature that we are seeing, right? Now, the Caribbean, like any other area in the world, we all want to get to that developed country status. We all want to be like a United States, a UK, a Switzerland, Australia. We want to get to that stage where our people, and the economy is in such a condition that, we can compete with just about anyone, right? But what does it mean for us getting there? So a lot of these developed countries got there on the backs of not just our work in terms of what we did to build them, but also in terms of what it took in terms of emissions to drive their economies. We're saying that we want to be able to drive our economies to get to that developed country status. But we understand that there are challenges, and we've been asking for support in getting there. And there are means that we can get there. But if you look at what we're stating here, the 1.5 that I mentioned before is essentially telling us that we need to start making changes to arrest that trajectory, right? But if we do nothing, it's only going to get worse. So this is where we are. And the thing is now, of course, the question is, are we the ones responsible for where we are now? And the answer is no. When you look at carbon dioxide emissions coming from island states like ours, our emissions are negligible. Even when you take our good friends from Trinidad or our emerging petroleum states like Guyana, we're still negligible. So we expect that developed countries are going to do more. We expect them to support us in being able to, deal with what is going to come with the changes that we're seeing. So there's a lot that is happening. Now, sure, go ahead. No. Come on, Celsius is correct. Shocking, isn't it? All right, so I'm going to jump a little bit further now, and we're going to look at what I refer to as the triple threat. Now, I'll be honest, when Diane asked me to do this presentation, I was a little bit unsure, because it's easy to give a climate change talk, but those come dime a dozen now. Most people understand the basics. So I didn't want to come here and talk to you about what you know already or what you have been hearing. You might get a little bit more information, but maybe not so much. But the question is, how does that fit with the credit unions? That's a big conversation. That's something that probably is not there yet. It started, but it's not where it should be. So I'm going to try to tweak as I go along. So the first aspect is looking at what I refer to as the triple threat. And the first one, as I have there, we're looking at it from the perspective of if anything happens, who do we run to? If there's a disaster in the region, we need to rebuild, right? So after every hurricane, after every significant drought period or anything, you have some storm systems that come through the area. It might not be a hurricane, but you have some, for instance, some coastal erosion, you lose some roads or bridges or houses. You have to rebuild. Who do we go to? We go to someone to finance it, right? A financial institution. So you're in the line of fire. Whoever makes those financial decisions, the regulators, etc., governments, anybody around that in the line of fire. So the Minister of Finance is probably going to be the first up. But the commercial banks, the credit unions, and all the others will also have to play a role, right? So the first thing that we need to take a look at is how do we maintain the capacity of financial systems to support economic activity? How many of you get your customers coming into you, or your members, let me put it that way, because I think that's how credit unions refer to their clients. How do you get your members? How do you support your members when these things happen? What happens when they run to you after a disaster? Loans, right? Anything else? Grants. But at the same time, credit unions, just like any other financial institutions, you need to plan for it, right? How many credit unions are actually planning for the changes that we're seeing and the changes to come? Well, I see one hand over there. How many managers do we have in the room? Let me see the managers, hands. 40. All right. How many head of credit unions are inside here now? 1, 2, well, we have a few. All right. So, I kind of taking note because I'm going to start getting closer to the heads. They make the final decisions, right? No? The directors. Where the directors at? All right. So we have more directors than anyone else. Perfect. All right. Secondly, we look at the fact that we must channel even larger share of the world's private savings towards sustainable investments. How many credit unions are having that conversation around what you use the members' funds to do or to support? One? Anyone else? Yeah? You're doing that, right? To what extent? Yeah, man. To what extent are you doing that? Mm-hmm. That's the Kingston Cooperative is going to get fully sustainable. You know why I'm actually happy to hear that? Because I'm a member. You didn't know. I know you didn't know. Yeah. Ina, speak up. Let them hear you.
I said that means you can get money to borrow.
See? I like Ina. I think I'm going to stay close to Ina today. We also need to be able to look at the third point, which is to maximize the development co-benefits of climate policies. Here's the thing. We can't just look at what is coming and think about just working towards addressing it when it happens. We have to develop. We can't stay static and just respond. Remember, I was saying before that island states want to become developed countries just like the global north, right? We want to be on the same economic footprint like Canada. Yes? No? No? Yes? So we have, yes, go ahead. Let's see. Let me check. Oh, you did? All right, there we go.
Good morning, Stacy from Trinidad, I guess. So we have persons coming to us. So we have persons coming. So we encounter a lot of people coming to us, and we do have the discussions with entrepreneurs, climate change advocates that are coming for funding or for loans for this business that will help with this problem that we have. And due to our social responsibility, we're like, yes, come, let's have the conversation. But I don't know what happens in other countries. I think what happens a lot with us when they come to the table for us to try to help them and get those loans. And I mean, we can't give all the money away in grants, but they aren't ready. The financials aren't there. The goal and objective is there. So I think maybe we can, as credit unions, have greater discussions to teach them how to do maybe business plans, financial planning, and prepare them to come for funding. Because I think, for me at least, in my position, that is half the problem there. The problem lies with the inability to fund for something that is just really a tooth.
Thank you very much. And it appears that she looked over my presentation and decided that she wanted to cover everything to the end before I even got there. But but that's perfectly right. The question is, coming there. The question is, how do we support the transition? And that is going to be a very big question mark about not over credit unions only, but policies in general, government, everybody that needs to feed into the conversation. So there's a lot that we're going to do, but I'm going to pick up on your point because we're going to get to some of that as the presentation goes on.
Good morning, everyone. Carol Babb from Belize. First of all, I believe that if we truly want to help our member owners, we need to do more education. Educate our member owners about what climate change is and the effects. And unless we do that, because I know a lot of people are still not aware, they hear the word, what does it mean? How will it impact me? People right now, they are living like from day to day. The pandemic has taught us a lot. As credit unions, it has taught us that we need to educate our people more on financial literacy, helping them to save, to borrow wisely. This pandemic should have taught us that we need to go into climate change and educate people more, but are we doing that?
Thank you. You see, I tell you, where's Dan? Is Dan around? No? I don't think I needed to be here today, because everybody so far seems to be well educated. Check at the bottom. The very bottom.
Hi, good morning. This is Derek Smith from COK Sodality. COK Sodality has, with the IDB, looked at the matter of climate change, especially in Jamaica, and how it affects or in terms of how we lend. So we have now been exploring this, and out of that have started to develop products centered around climate change, primarily in the solar sector. So this is how we have responded to that matter.
Thank you, sir. We seem to be starting the conversation from the back of the conversation forward. Are we jumping back and forth? No problem. It means that at least the conversation has started, but not just started, there's actually actions already being taken. And I'm happy that Carol, you mentioned the pandemic, and you notice it's mixed into that third threat. Nobody was talking about the pandemic 4 years ago. We were talking about climate change. We've been getting better understanding of climate change and what we need to do as a people. But then came the pandemic. Let me ask a question. What happened when the pandemic came in terms of resources? What did we do? Good morning, Michelle. How are you this morning? What did we do? The pandemic. When the pandemic came, what did you do as a credit union? What did you do differently? What happened with your funding?
Well, as a responsible credit union, we reached out to our membership and we offered funding to assist them during that period of time.
Thank you, Michelle. Don't worry, man. You're not going to feel the class. You know? So your members came, they needed support, but in some cases you were proactive. You went out and you started that conversation in terms of how you can support, right? So let me ask a question. What would have happened, or what happened if we had, for instance, a hurricane in the middle of all of this? So you're responding to a pandemic, and you'd have had to respond to a hurricane at the same time. So had we had, for instance, Irma and Maria last 2020, when the pandemic was really driving forward, where would we have been? Would have been in a very difficult position, right?
In the case of St. Vincent, they didn't have a hurricane, but they had a natural disaster. But while I have the mic, I want to make a point, right? We talk about, you made a point a while ago about our contribution to the emission is minuscule, right? Right now we have countries like in the UK, for instance, they are trying to go more energy efficient vehicles and stuff. And it's the traditional vehicles now have become more cheaper because of it. So what is happening right now, you see in the Caribbean, is becoming a dumping ground because people are diesel vehicle, you know, in maybe 5 years, England want to be no more diesel there. So that is coming downstream. We as a Caribbean, we are not proactive in the sense that right now we should be making a plan to prevent that from happening. And also all that metal that is coming down, like for instance, vehicles from Japan as well. What is our view? What are we going to do? So I think that's the conversation we probably need to start having right now at a different level. Thank you.
Thanks, Jermaine. You know, good point raised. But there's something that you said that really went deep. We haven't started that conversation to the level that we need to. So obviously, I'm going to charge credit unions that your members come to you, and to a great extent, they come to you, for instance, for loans for motor vehicles, right? And they come to you because you probably offer better rates than commercial banks, right? So it puts you in a very good position to start planning for and having those conversations with your members. One of our permanent climate scientists in the region, Professor Michael Taylor from the UAE Climate Studies Group, made a statement fairly recently where he said that, you know, when you think about climate change, it has the potential to set back economies in a way that it will be measured in years. The initial estimates for rebuilding from what we're looking forward to right now would be staggering. If you think about it, think about the hurricanes that we have seen. Have any country been able to rebuild and respond within months after a hurricane? Can we still see the ravages of those hurricanes even on the economy 5, 6, 7 years after? As island states, we have a saying where when we go to, for instance, UNFCCC meetings, we have a saying that we go, it only takes one of these storms to set us back 20 or 30 years. Jamaica had Hurricane Gilbert in 1988. Looking through some of the economic profiles, we have only gotten to a stage where we consider ourselves to have recovered from Hurricane Gilbert around about 2010. Hurricane Gilbert was a Category 3. Now, where will Dominica and Antigua, for instance, be in terms of their recovery? How long will it take them to get back? A lot of these systems tend to have a very big impact on us. But some of the things that we don't talk about is the irreplaceable loss in terms of culture and cultural assets. When you lose those, how do you replace them? Climate change has the potential to inflict that sort of damage. So what we're experiencing now, what we're accustomed to, what we call our island life, will change. This is not what it's going to be like several years down the line. And we need to be able to prepare for that.
My name is Judith Baines from Barbados. I find that we're not proactive enough. We always say God is a Bajan, God is a Trini, God is a Jamaican, everybody says it, right? But things are getting worse. And you have heard it, right? And you have to put things in place. You have to think about it. We're trying to get something done in Barbados, which is planning for the hurricane when it happens. We haven't been able to get it off the ground. It's disappointing because people wait for things to happen. And you have to stop being reactive.
You're absolutely right, Judith. We are a very reactive set of people. And maybe it's part of the island life where we relax and take it easy. So, I mean, I look a little bit more on the science, and I'm sure you have seen these sort of graphs before. Temperature. We were talking about that before. That's what the trend looks like. That's a 30-year mean. So we talk about climate change, we tend to look at what is that average around a 30-year period, and it's a moving 30-year period. But what does that average look like? And then we compare that to where we are currently. But that's the trend. That's what we're seeing. And as we go, it's only expected to get worse.
Thank you very much, Orville. Glenroy Williams from Jamaica. I want to play devil's advocate in the room, if you don't mind. These aren't necessarily my view. I'm speaking for a friend. That is not you. But recently we saw in one of the most powerful countries in the world, one of the most powerful leaders back then came out and said there's no such thing as climate change. And then we have some religious views that climate change, as we call it or we perceive it, is a natural part of the evolution of life. It is what God has ordained. My question is, how do you respond to persons and pontiffs like that, especially where some persons hold a view that what we ought to do is be agile, adapt, and modify our lifestyle instead of trying to fight against what will invariably happen?
Thanks, Glenroy. I am strongly suspicious that it's party's friends and party's own. And I think he may have seen my very last slide. But here's the thing. The climate has always been changing. Let's be very clear on that. Climate isn't static. The climate has always been changing. And one of the things that we need to recognize when we're talking about climate change, we're thinking here about the human change. That change that we have done in addition to what is normal. So the change would have been continuing. But what we have done is, for instance, you put on, you're going to the kitchen, right? And mommy put pot on the fire. She's boiling some food. But you turn it down low. You come inside and you're hungry. You can't wait. So what you do? You turn it up, right? Because you're going to cook faster. And you're going to get to eat quicker, right? In developing and the pace at which we've been going, what we've essentially done is turn that up. Because we want it now. But you're right about one part. We need to be agile. We need to be able to change with time. So we need to see the technology coming on board with time. And maybe it's an impetus for us to push harder and bring in the new technology. But I'm sure there's something else that you'd have noticed. You look in the global north, while they are making changes from a technological perspective, they have also cemented the place for the technology that is creating the problem. They haven't necessarily moved away from it. Why? Because they say that they must continue to develop. So it means, therefore, that we have turned up the heat while somebody's in the next room thinking about, okay, how can I get my little solar frying pan to work? But we're not going to turn down the heat because we need the food right now, right? So that's what you see. So precipitation now is a little bit different. It doesn't give you that sharp change that you see with temperature. When it comes to precipitation, it's variable. But can anybody tell me what are we seeing from a climate change perspective where precipitation is concerned? I'm talking about rainfall. Somebody said less rain. Anything else? Extreme? Extreme rain. What is extreme rain?
We're seeing a lot of floods happening.
All right, Roxanne said we're seeing a lot of floods. Let me ask a question. Weren't we always seeing floods?
A
greater extent. Somebody said drought. Yeah, man, we're coming to the drought.
The problem is we're seeing rain in areas that never had rain, and in areas that need rain, there is no. For example, some of the lakes in the US are drying up because of the absence of rain, and some areas like Salt Lake have intense rain causing statewide flooding.
All right, so one of the big challenges that we're seeing when it comes to precipitation is that it's variable. And you should know this. Wherever you are in the country, you might, in one area there might be rainfall and in another area no rainfall, right? So one area drought, one area flood, and one area just a little bit of rain, right?
That's right. And what we have also recognized in Guyana is that our rainy season has started long before the regular rainy season.
Thank you for that bit. So one of the couple of things that we're seeing is that there is a drying trend coming into the Caribbean, more so in the western half of the Caribbean. So unfortunately, countries like Jamaica, Belize, Haiti, Cuba, Bahamas are likely to get a little bit drier than the rest of the Caribbean. But the entire Caribbean is on a warming trend. That's the reality. We're seeing more intense storms. How many persons remember the Christmas rains in Eastern Caribbean? I think it was 2014. Particularly St. Vincent, Dominica, and St. Lucia, right? Barbados, well, yeah. We tend to forget Barbados get rain and tropical storms because they're so far out, right? Well, I won't talk about the tiny part. But we've been seeing some of these intense rain. So they got somewhere around 12.5 to 13 inches of rain over a 3 to 5 hour period. In Jamaica, we're seeing a lot of that. Where within 20 to 30 minutes, you get intense rainfall, and places that never flooded before are flooding now. Major roadways flooded within 20 to 30 minutes, and what happens? Gridlock, right? Economic production goes south. Right. Yeah, so we're getting more of those. So when you think about this part of it, that's one of the things that we're seeing. If you notice, I've not yet been focusing anywhere around hurricanes. So forget the hurricanes. They're going to come. They're going to be more intense. But this is what we use to on a day-to-day basis. This is the reality that we have to get used to. In Jamaica, for instance, and in other places, when I talk about the drying effect, Jamaica has 2 rainfall periods. So the rainy season starts May and goes through to November. There's an early peak, which is very short, between May and June. And then the next peak starts September, going back to November. The first peak coincides with the planting season. Unfortunately, that peak is flattening out. So it means, therefore, that the dry period, which starts in December, which would have gone all the way to March into maybe early May, that part is now looking like it's going to extend into summer. Now, for the entire Caribbean, the two hottest months of the year are which months? July and August. So imagine if this drying trend continues all the way from December through to August. You can imagine what that means for agriculture, what that means for food security. So when a lot of people think about climate change, you know, when they hear it, they think about rainfall, hurricanes, etc. They think about maybe droughts and floods. But how many of us make the leap towards food security? As credit unions, you have members that come to you who are farmers or fishermen. And they come to you for loans to help them to prepare for the planting season or to prepare for reaping, right? So you have to be prepared now to figure out what are the new packages that you're going to be offering to them, because this is what is coming. Anybody has seen a graph looking like this before? An image looking like this before? Sea level rise. How many of us have heard the term? Yeah? So when you hear about sea level rise, what do you think? Yeah, Gary, give us an answer.
Yeah, the sea taking over the land along the shores, so like the beaches, you see you lose land from that aspect.
Okay. Anyone else? Cyril. Take a chance for me. Sea level rise.
I believe a good place is nearby us in Negril. When I used to go to Negril one time, I could have walked miles go out. But now I can't walk a foot.
Thank you, Cyril. I think Cyril has also seen that picture where it shows this tree that's in the water. It's a very famous picture.
Let's very quickly start thinking about tsunamis.
All right. All right. So, someone mentioned tsunamis. So let me quickly jump to two things. I was going to do it a little bit later, but earlier somebody mentioned the volcanic eruption in St. Vincent. And now we hear about tsunamis. Unfortunately, those two things have nothing to do with climate change. So the tsunamis generally are triggered by an earthquake movement, or movement of the soil. Volcanic eruptions are also similar in terms of those geological changes that we're experiencing. So both of them have little to do with climate change, but a tsunami because of climate change, a tsunami can be even more intense. So when you add something like sea level rise, then a surge coming from a tsunami can have an even greater impact. There's a question, a hand somewhere up this side. Come.
Jessica Phipps from St. Kitts. When I think about sea level rise, I mean, number of vulnerability areas come to mind, sectors including coastal erosion, which would affect our tourism, which is a major revenue earner for many Caribbean countries. Also, it would affect the coastal areas, both commercial and residential buildings, infrastructure that is on the coastal areas. So you would have flooding, you could have land now being lost to, being claimed by the sea. And so there are a number of things. I guess it also, to some extent, may affect even the fishers. I think the fishing industry. So I'll let somebody else.
Thank you very much for that one. Yes. Sure. Pass the mic down for me, please.
Good morning, Michael Sayers, Vincent. one of the things with regards to climate change, if we notice the map, the entire Caribbean is surrounded by the region that shows the rise in sea level. Now, factor in the size of some of the islands in the Caribbean. As the water level rises, we are losing valuable land space. And that is just in addition to the points that were just raised. But I think it is something that we in particular, whereas in the US, they lose a few acres of land, it might be okay. But when you have a very small island losing that much land mass, then we run into serious, serious problems. And it's therefore something that we need to begin to take a serious look at.
Thank you. Send the mic back this way. I think there's someone on this side. Right. So, I mean, that's a very, very, very good point. Approximately 60% of our residents in our island states live within what we refer to as the coastal zone, an area up to 5 miles from high tide. How many credit unions are actually sitting in the coastal zone? I'm pretty certain that almost, you're sitting here, you're thinking about it now, right? I'm pretty certain that your credit unions are not all sitting on the hill looking down on the people. Most of you have credit unions that are smack in the coastal zone, right? So if there's, so for instance, if all the ice sheet were to melt, would there be credit unions anymore for most of us? We'd lose the houses, we'd lose the infrastructure, and we'd lose the credit unions, right? The buildings at least. Yes.
Hi, good morning. Terrell Innes from Barbados. Now, when we look at the rise in temperature, there are two things that I can see that's happening. One, we have the glacial melting, which is going to add, if you can say, more of the liquid type of water rather than the solid type of water into the sea. Then you have the heating of the oceans. And if you can imagine a pot with heat and water, as the water starts to heat, it expands. So what we are having really is twofold. One, the water in the Caribbean or around the Caribbean is heating, and that is causing the sea itself to rise. And two, we're actually adding water to the seas because the glaciers are actually melting. So they're adding water to it. So we're losing land, not because of what we are doing specifically, but what we are doing as a people in general. So to my mind, that's the double whammy that we're being hit with.
Thank you, Terrell. You know, somebody went to a good school, you know, but the biology working, right? All right, so you're gonna get that expansion with the warming temperatures. Interestingly, the Eastern Caribbean is technically on a slightly upward lift from a geological perspective, whereas the Western Caribbean is more on a subsidence. It's actually going down a little. That said, the mean sea level in the region, it's going up. But just like rainfall, it's variable. It's not the same in every location. Let me, before I take the person on the mic, let me ask you something. What happens if you put a cube of ice in a glass of water? The water level rise, right? What happens when that ice cube melts? Does the level change? Who said yes? Who said no? Let me see the hands who said no. You're not sure, right? Because I've seen some hands doing. Does the level change? Yes? Yes? No? The level doesn't change. What's the mic?
Yeah, I have the mic. Okay. Alfred Noel, TWCO Trinidad. I don't know, probably I had it wrong because what I've learned that the melting of the ice in the Arctic, when these big chunks of ice melt, they fall into the sea, which causes a tsunami. So I don't know what causes the ice to melt. And if it's climate change that causing the ice to melt, then that's an effect of climate change. So I tend to differ with your opinion that climate change doesn't affect the tsunami. Thank you.
Thank you. No, you see, let's back up a sec. What I'm saying is that tsunamis are generally not a climate change impact. Now, it can be made worse by climate change. So the warming may end up resulting in, for instance, all right, let me give you a good example. If you think of Antarctica, and some portion of it might break off and fall into the water, that does not change sea level rise, because that is already in the sea. Falling off might trigger, well, not necessarily a tsunami, but it might trigger a surge in that locality. You're not going to feel it in South America, in Chile or Argentina or Australia or any of those countries. It's like, you know, just chipping off a bit of the ice and it falls in, you're going to get a splash. No question about it. And if you happen to be in a boat anywhere close by, you're going to feel it. It may rock it well, it may even turn it over. You're going to feel it. Think about the ice sheets, for instance, at the top of the mountains. Now, when those ice sheets melt, where does the water go? It comes downhill, right? Where's it going to end up? In the oceans, right? That is going to lead to your sea level rise. Now, if there's an earthquake movement and a part of the subshelf under the sea falls, that will create a change and it will generate those tsunami tides. If sea levels have risen, then that tsunami will likely have an even greater impact on any coastline that it impacts, simply because the sea level has already risen. So it's higher in, it's going further in. It means more areas are likely to be impacted. All right, everybody with me on that one? Yeah? Yeah, Karel? Oh, that's ma'am, thanks. So I'm going to go a little bit faster now, because you've gotten the rhythm and it's clear now that everybody understands the science behind it and the impacts that we're seeing, right? And if you think about, for instance, hurricanes, as I said, we haven't gone into them because we know about them. We're used to them. But if you think about hurricanes that we've been getting, you'll realize that they're becoming far more intense, if not frequent. We haven't proven that they're more frequent. What we have proven, though, is that they have become more intense. So if you look on the hurricanes that have been landing in recent times, we have had a lot more hurricanes between 3 and 5 than we have had in any other period of time. We've had instances where we have had hurricanes a week apart. Right? Dennis and Emily back in, I think that was what, 06, 07, or somewhere thereabout. But if you look in recent times, we have had Dorian, we have had Irma, we have had Maria, we've had a few of those that are 4s and 5s. As a matter of fact, those 3 landed in Caribbean islands at 5. Remember, and I said it only takes one of these to set us back easily a generation. Only one. US had Katrina. New Orleans is still recovering. But they're a developed country with the resources to respond and rebuild. How many of our island states could have responded and rebuilt after the devastation that we saw from in Louisiana? So we have seen flooding, tropical cyclones, droughts, etc. And we know where we need to be addressing our impacts. We know we need to be looking at water, agriculture, food security, energy, ecosystem. So we kind of get that picture now. We're very clear on where we are. This is something else that, you know, we were talking about it earlier. We said we're feeling hotter, right? So we're getting what? More hot days and more hot nights. That conversely means that we're getting fewer cool days and cool nights. So we're pretty much hoping that every time there's winter, that the north have a very bad winter and we can get some cold breeze blowing down this side, right? Sad, right? But that's the only way our AC turn on. But that's the reality for us. So how will credit unions support their members to be able to address this? I am pretty certain that your members are coming to you more and more saying, boy, you know, it's too hot, I need an AC, can I get a loan? What's the scale of the impact? We were talking about this before. Everybody remember Hurricane Maria? Now we think about what happened in our region, but what about Puerto Rico? Anybody remember that the scale of devastation in Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico is still developing, is still recovering from that impact. The entire energy grid went down. I mean, it was suspect before, but the hurricane just said, you know, it's bad, we're gonna smash it up. The water was also, they were dealing with a significant drought before that, and that just made it even worse. So we're not the only ones feeling it. The island states that are affiliated with the developed north, they're not escaping, they're like us. We cannot take up our island states and move when a hurricane is coming. We have no choice but to do what? Batten down and pray for the best, right? But we can hope for the best if we prepare for it, right? So we know when hurricane season come around, we all start thinking about what we need to do to prepare. But how do you prepare for a category 5? Pray? I really hope that's not the only answer. We think about, for instance, Antigua and Barbuda. Over 300 years, people have been living on the island of Barbuda. After one hurricane, everybody had to come off. First time in 300 years. What's the likelihood that that could happen again? Remember I said it only takes one of these incidences, one of these systems to create that sort of challenge. There's a lot that is happening. And you're going to get the PowerPoint, so you don't need to read everything on the slide. I'm sure your teachers would have told you this. Now, anybody recognize that image? Yes? What's that image? St. Kitts, right? What's in St. Kitts? Right, that's where you are, right? Your headquarters, right? Yeah. Right. So, let's take a look at this now. We're talking originally about the money. And we say, you know, you have to think about what does that mean for credit unions? What does that mean for climate change? Strangely enough, there's a unique relationship there. You think about the investment. You have your members. They come to you because they don't get the same response from commercial banks. They feel a lot closer to you, right? You're a more community sort of institution. Whereas the commercial banks probably see themselves more like, you know, that big financial arm at a national level. Whereas the credit unions, you think of yourself as being right there in the community, right? Right beside the members, right? So when him sneeze, you hear him sneeze, and you know you're going to prepare to help him, right? Right. You're right in the community, you're living with them, you know what the issues are, you know what your members are experiencing because you're right there. So financial institutions such as the credit unions, you have to think about how do you invest and give your business that impact where the environment is concerned and where climate change is adding to it. Because technically, climate change is an additionality. At least the human-induced climate change, it's an additionality. There would have been change, but we have accelerated it. Okay, here, yeah. Oh yeah, Glenroy? Glenroy, you hear that? Your question has been answered. All right. All right. Let's look at some numbers. And we're going to look at your cousins, the commercial banking sector. 35 of the world's major banks provided $2.7 trillion to fossil fuel companies since the Paris Agreement in 2015. That's a landmark climate change agreement. $2.7 trillion. Remember earlier I was saying that the developed North, as much as they are pushing the technology barrier, they have not given up on their development, which is based on fossil fuels. I'm pretty certain that credit unions are not investing in fossil fuels, or at least I hope not. But commercial banks, especially the investment side, that's where the money is going. So again, I think it's, yeah, Glenroy again. Are we actually being agile and adapting with technology and trying to move forward with time? Or are we trying to still stay where we are because that is what we know and that is what has been leading our development? This is where we are. So one of the things to think about is money is sitting in our bank accounts and it's being used for loans, etc., mortgages in credit unions rather than investments, right? When you think of those mortgages that you're giving out, are you providing mortgages for properties that are already in an area that is prone to devastation by an impact of climate change? Have you actually started doing that risk analysis? Interestingly enough, there has actually been a research that was done where credit unions are concerned. How many of you are aware of this paper? Done by the Institute, Sirius and the Philine Research Institution, the Changing Climate for Credit Unions. All right, it says shifting responsibility from the environmental people to the credit unions. No, I tell you the simple reason for this. All of us have a role to play. All right? Let me see the hands of those that have seen this report. How many of our directors have seen this report? How many managers have seen this report? All right, so that means that after this, everybody's going to go and download the report, right? Yes? Yes? Yes. All right. So in putting this together, I was actually shocked when I came across this. Unfortunately, I couldn't go through all of it to try to put this presentation together. I think it's over 200 pages. But it's a very interesting report. And I would really advise you to download the report and take a close look at it. Interestingly, and most of this is based around the United States, as you can imagine. So, we need to start figuring out, can we do this sort of assessment in the Caribbean? To figure out where we stand as credit unions in the Caribbean. Incredibly risky for credit unions to ignore climate threats. 60% of US credit unions physically located in vulnerable locations. How many of our credit unions in the Caribbean are in vulnerable locations? And let me put it this way, it doesn't mean that your institution needs to be, for instance, flooded out for you to be impacted by flooding. If the roadway that leads to the credit union is flooded, you are impacted by that flooding episode. You cannot get in, you cannot get out. So it doesn't have to be the physical plant. Credit unions having $141 billion in assets from high-risk industries. So they are now trying to evolve to climate change into consideration. How many of our credit unions, looking at your asset base, are trying to make that change? There are many financial assets that you need to think about. And these are some of the categories that you look at. Real property, infrastructure, right? Streams of government revenue or insurance. Because when you provide mortgages, that mortgage also comes with an insurance, right? A peril insurance. So you're trying to safeguard that investment. After a hurricane, of course, you do another assessment if your members have been impacted, right? And their premiums may go up depending on the scale of the damage. You know, one of the interesting things, bet you no one can tell me which industry is probably the most prepared for climate change. Again? Oh, see, everybody bright, everybody bright. The insurance sector is the most prepared for climate change. Why? They are constantly doing risk assessments. They're constantly thinking about what will happen if these things were to occur, and how do we set premiums going into the future. Maybe that's one of the reasons we don't like them.
Isabella Prentice, Dominica. I beg to differ a little bit, because in Dominica, we were heavily impacted by Maria. And to this day, some people have not received a cent from the insurance. They were not ready in the Caribbean.
You know, you mentioned Dominica. You know, one of the things that I found interesting, after that hurricane, the impact was somewhere in the region of 224% of GDP. After the Christmas rains and the financial resources that came in, some of the support that came in, as well as what government provided, there's a lot of work done to bring back the infrastructure, to build back better. So roads, bridges, among other things were put in place. And it's a loan that the government took out to do this. Then came the hurricane. Anybody know what happened? A lot of that investment was lost because the country did not put in infrastructure that could have handled a Category 5. Most of us cannot afford a Category 5. The investment to build a resilient infrastructure for a Category 5 is very expensive. Most times we put in infrastructure that makes it to a Category 3. So Dominica is still repaying on that loan, and the infrastructure that the loan provided to a great extent is gone. So you're going to have to get out another loan to put in new infrastructure. That's what I'm talking about when I said if you think about one of these storms, is that the impact is so significant that it takes you a generation or more to recover. When you look at your close relationship with impacted communities, loss of collateralized assets, loans in mortgage portfolios, properties in your loan portfolios, that's what the credit unions and the financial sector on a whole tend to think about. So for instance, you look at, the housing assets that you have. How many may have been damaged in a particular hurricane? How many of those were under mortgages? What will likely happen in a future incident? Those are the considerations that you're having, right? Are you actually doing that risk assessment? Yes? How many of you are actually doing that risk assessment? How many are preparing for that next Category 5? My directors, how many of you are pushing for that sort of work to be done? Or should I say, how many credit unions have actually done that work? Not yet. Today's a shame day. No, it's not a shame day. Let's call it a wake-up day. When you think of your members and their businesses, how many of you can look on your portfolio and realistically say, this portion of it is based on high exposure to climate risk? When you provide those loans, how many of those loans are considering the climate risk? Any credit union doing that? Any hands? Not yet. Not yet. Let me guess, we're going to start this work sometime soon, right? Right? Sure.
I would say of Sonia Taylor from Jamaica. I would say that for us, the most significant revelation here is that we deem property to be our most secured collateral. And therefore, with what you're sharing this morning, it is interesting that we need now to look clinically at how we are going to treat with property and the possible impairment because of disasters caused to climate change.
Thanks. And you know, with all that said, everybody know who I'm going to put on the spot to drive this change, right? Yes? Everybody agree? Yeah? Yeah? You have your job. Since the 1980s, the number of registered weather loss events has tripled. Can you imagine that? What does that mean for us in the Caribbean? What does that mean for your support to your members? How will you adjust going forward?
Question, how many of us have business continuity plans, off-site storage, off-site for when the credit union can't function, the one on the coast? Is there one that you have connected with that can assist you that may be up the hill?
Judith, do you have one?
Yes, we do. Oh, sorry. Yes, we do.
How many others have a continuity plan? Nice, nice. So we're getting there, right? How many of you have office disruption due to a weather event? How many of you experienced an office disruption due to a weather event? Only about 3, 4, 5? Seriously? So the rest of you have not been impacted by a hurricane? No? I want to live in your Caribbean. Have we seen this? Is this something that we are used to in the Caribbean? No, I'm not talking about your regular house fire that somebody accidentally forget the candle and it fall over and the house catch a fire. Bushfire, yeah. Now, let me clear up another myth. In the Caribbean, we are not seeing bushfires that are spontaneous because of the heat. Pretty much 99%, if not the full 100, somebody started it. There's some little careless action that started it. But the extent of the devastation has been made worse because of climate change. So we have gotten hotter, we've gotten drier. We're starting to getting even stronger winds in the dry season. That fans the flames. We're starting to see a lot more of this. Even as small as in Nevis, this is happening. That's a reality for us. But we have all seen this, right? We've all seen this. And this is expected to continue. Let me not say get worse. This is expected to continue. We've all seen this. We're gonna get more storms. Every hurricane season, we're going to go on our hands and knees and we're gonna pray. And we're gonna beg that we don't get any, right? And some of us are going to go to church and say, Lord, put your arm around the country when you hear it's coming. Guide it around, Lord, right? I mean, that's just who we are. That's what we do. Or most of us. But when it comes, that's a reality. It's not for you, it's for your members. That's a reality. But there's another thing that you need to bear in mind. There's this thing called transitional risk. And this is where, Glenn, a lot of what you're talking about comes into play. looking at the risk that comes from technology, legal, regulatory policy, or other factors, and the transformation that's required. How do we move towards new green energy sources? Shifts in transportation. How do we look at the changes that are going to come in agriculture? How do we plan for food security? What is the role for credit unions in all of this? Credit unions are not just there when a member comes and say, I need a loan to add a room to my house. Credit unions need to start thinking about, with the change in climate, what else can we do? How do we move forward? So we've seen a lot of this. We are very much accustomed to the petroleum industry. But we've seen changes: solar, wind, desalination, biodigesters. We have seen a trend towards looking at these sort of technologies. Is there a role for credit unions to step into that space? And to what extent? So can you provide loans, for instance, to support a community organization that provides a significant support to the community by helping them to put solar panels in place, reduce their energy footprint, put forward clean energy that could potentially go into the grid, and provide a support to the changes that the country is trying to make? So these are, some of the things that we need to think about. Technology is just one aspect of it. And Carol is telling me that, my time is pretty much up. So there's a lot of challenge for credit unions. And Carol, I'm going to beg you 5 extra minutes. There's a lot of challenge for credit unions. And we need to figure out how we're going to make sure that your institution's climate performance is addressed. How we're going to make sure that you get to that point that you can publish the documentation on how you're investing or using the capital that's provided by your members in respect of climate change. Carol mentioned the Sustainable Development Goals before. Now you need to think about climate change. Let me guess, I've made your job even harder, right? But it's happening. You have to respond. And I'm going to end here. And you're going to get the presentation, which will have a lot of solutions. We've been talking about some of them. But I'm leaving a lot of information in there for you to pick up and follow up on. But this is where a lot of us get stuck. And somebody mentioned it. Well, a few persons mentioned this earlier. There's a lack of urgency. We are reactive. We are not proactive. And when I say that, I'm talking about us as a collective, not as individuals. Some of us may be very proactive, but as a collective in the region, we're very reactive. Unfortunately, we have even some of our leaders that basically say that we will respond depending on what the global north says. And that's a reality. So we have to figure out if we are really supporting our members and if we see ourselves as part of the community, then it is incumbent on us to figure out how do we move from this lack of urgency? How do we put those risk analyses in place so that we can prepare for what we know is coming? How can we integrate all of this into more near-term plans and stop thinking about, okay, where we want to be 30 years down the line? We need to have that vision, but we need to have that plan as to how we're going to get there. And that plan needs to start now. What is the shared approach or guidance that's required from our regulators? Because you're in a situation where you're guided by regulation, right? But are you sitting and waiting for the regulators to tell you what to do? Or are you going to push the conversation to ensure that they respond and support you in terms of where the regulation needs to go? If you're going to be able to provide those renewable energy loans and the regulation doesn't support it, then you need to push the regulators in that direction because that's what you see coming. If your farmers are going to be coming for more loans to drive their adaptation to climate change and be able to provide that food security, then you need to be able to speak to your regulators to give you that framework to do it, right? Yes? Yes? I mean, I don't know that talk. That's your expertise. But I would want to think that that is a conversation you need to have. Just as I need to have a conversation with policymakers about ensuring that climate change goes into every policy that we do. Slow growth in considering opportunities for credit unions around climate change, RE, energy efficiency. How many of you are looking, for instance, at your institutions, the plant, the physical plant, and thinking about what do we need to do from an energy efficiency perspective, that we can bring down our light bills, we can conserve on water, or we can do all of these measures to ensure that we are responding not just to a reality, but to the climate change reality that we're experiencing. Are you waiting on your partners to understand how they assess risk before you start to assess risk? So are you going to wait on the insurance sector to tell you, hey guys, we have done the risk assessment, this is what you need to do? Or are you going to get proactive and respond so that they can see that you're already making the changes and be more supportive? So when you start supporting your members with your peril insurance, that you're not just responding because your reinsurance have said, well, you know, rates need to go up by 4%, but you've already created a space, knowing your members, that you're now looking to project more, maybe at 2.5%, and they can understand why you're making that sort of change. All right? So these are things that you need to think about. There's a lot of need to respond, to become proactive. And I'm looking forward to the credit unions becoming very proactive. I'm looking forward to being able to walk to my credit union and be able to go in and say, hey, I need loans to put energy efficient systems at home. And they are aware and understand my need and why it needs to be done. But I should also be able to walk into a credit union and see that energy efficiency on display. So you're going to show and teach, and your members hopefully will respond, versus not being proactive, and it's the members coming in and telling you, hey guys, come on, wake up, get with the program. This is what we need. All right? So I'm giving you those marching orders. I know Carol is telling me to come, Orville, get off the floor. It's my time now. But I'm hoping that we would have had a good conversation today. And as I said to you before, I know I could have taken the entire morning. I probably could take the entire day. We could have had a wonderful session all day today. I mean, I could have even given you an exam at the end of the day and do a marking, right? But we're not going to do that. I'm going to hand over to Carol. But I'm going to give you those marching orders. And I'm going to tell the big boss that he needs to get it done. I am from the Caribbean. As much as I'm based all the way on the other side of the world, I am from the Caribbean. And I want to ensure that when I reach out and I say, what have you done since last year we spoke? That the big boss can say, hey, Orville, here's what we have done. We have done these 4 or 5 things. Don't make it 100. Be proactive, but be real. What are the things that you can actually do and find a way to getting it done? And somebody wants to have the last word. You know, I guess it's not my job.
Glenn Ducre, Dominica. A real risk, and I'll mention the case of Dominica, is where you have the mortgage insurance providers not having sufficient capital base or being sufficiently underwritten to the point where they can in fact cover all the requests and claims as a result of, you know, arising from hurricane damage, etc. Because we have a case in Dominica where one of the insurance providers went under because it wasn't sufficiently underwritten, and many of our, well, I would think some of our members might be included, but I, for example, because I'm an attorney, I represent one of the premium holders at the insurance company. And what has happened, because in fact that person went to the bank, I am now suing the bank for negligence, for the fact that they didn't do enough due diligence to ensure that that particular insurance company had the wherewithal to withstand such, damage like Maria that passed. But as you mentioned, the case of being proactive, this is something that we need to chew on. Because the fact that we are in a high, risk area, especially given the fact that hurricanes come through almost every year, our premiums are going up, and many insurance companies are sort of having a second look, or they are at the point where they are wondering whether it makes economic sense to continue to invest in the region. We should be thinking as a region of setting up our own insurance company, our own mortgage insurance companies, so we can help our members and the like. And the thing is that some of our credit unions are very liquid. For example, I don't know if I should say it, but our National Cooperative Credit Union in Dominica, we are very liquid. We sometimes don't even know what to do with the money.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
And I
this
don't-
is something we should look at.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you so very much. I'd never really like to cut off our participants, but because we are actually over time, and Mr. Gray had even asked for a couple of minutes, and so I just want to try to keep this as tight as possible. But thank you for the participation. I saw that it was very lively. I'm going to invite you to kindly give Mr. Gray a round of applause. For many of you who don't know, he's actually a coastal ecologist, and he's been doing this for 20 years in terms of climate. I mean, he doesn't even look that age, right? But he has a PhD in environmental biology, and he's we've leaned on his technical experience across the region. And so this is a topic that, as you rightfully said, could have gone on and you could have really dissected it. But we thank you so very much for your time and for breaking it down as much as possible. Now, I am somebody who's an advocate for those persons online, and there was a question that came in online, and it's just a yes or no. It was Noel Nurse who said, with all that we've been listening to, should we as small island developing states decide to do man-made offshore islands?
No.
No. Okay, I just want to make sure that we addressed it. So the answer is no, but if we want to get a full answer, maybe I can get you to respond online. Or
I'll quickly say, if you just need to look at what's happening in the Middle East with Dubai, all of them are already going underwater.
Argument done. So, so this is what's going to happen, and I'm going to say this very, very, very quickly. We're going to break for the coffee break. That takes place in salon number 4. That's the other side of the exhibitors hall. When we come back, please understand that we will have 3 breakout sessions all happening at the same time. Please refer to your agenda if you're interested in cryptocurrencies. What is the credit union's response? That is going to be in Salon 1 and 2. How to avoid intellectual infringement in marketing content. That is Salon number 3. And if we're going to look at whose am I? Data dilemma, that will take place in the theater. So just refer to your agenda. They are located online so that we can resume. So at 10:45, we get back. We have our breakout sessions. Thank you so very much. And ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't fill out the survey, we asked at the end of the day yesterday about the survey. We really would like to get those responses. We got a few yesterday, but if you have the time, go to slido.com, I believe, and you can fill out your survey. Thank you so very much.
Feel the vibe. Give me that beat. Yeah.
can you feel the vibe? Give me that beat. Make you feel better. We love that sound. Can you feel that vibe? I wanna see it. I love your vibe. Can you feel the vibe? Give me that beat. The vibe. Can you feel the vibe? Give me that beat.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Okay, we're giving folks just a couple moments to grab their seats while we commence this, before we commence this session. So we all know we're running a little behind. We had a very interesting session a moment ago. I think we are in for another very, very interesting session. So good morning again. My name is Andre Goindu. I'm the CEO of CUNA Caribbean Insurance and a member of the CCCU board. It is my pleasure this morning to be bringing to you a speaker from my parent company, CUNA Mutual Group, a very dynamic guy with a very dynamic topic. I remember when we were working on the agenda, you know, always trying to think of what's relevant. You know, we come to the conferences, we hear a lot of things, every conference you attend. Sometimes you hear things, you know, multiple times over the years, but I think this is definitely something that's happening now. It's been happening for a while, but this thing continues to evolve in a manner that sometimes you think you get it, and then you think, I really don't understand what's happening. So I really wanted someone on the topic that is going to bring some relevance to our business. And in that regard, I would want to introduce you to Mr. Steve Husick. He is a senior manager, customer intelligence for CUNA Mutual Group. He supports the group's competitive and market intelligence unit by providing timely, high-impact research and intelligence to all of his internal clients. He's a thought leader. He closely monitors the latest development in the credit union and broader financial services and service industries. He also conducts annual studies on issues that matter to the C-suite credit union executives in the US. You should also know this is Steve's first visit to Jamaica. So please give him a warm Jamaica welcome. He's done many things in his career, but I think I want to get Steve started based on how late we've run. And I am really, really interested to hear Steve's presentation this morning. So Steve, without further ado, please take it away.
Thank you for the introduction. Really appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. It's still morning, right? I wanted to start out and just thank everybody for joining the session. I wasn't sure how many folks were going to come and attend the session, but thank you very much for coming. I am excited to share with you, the state of cryptocurrencies. And what's really special about today's presentation is that we actually have some insights into the CCCU member credit union's response to cryptocurrencies. So we did a survey, and I'm happy to be able to share those results with you. So over the past, I would say half year, it has been a tumultuous ride for people who have invested in cryptocurrencies. The peak price for Bitcoin was in November of last year, 68,000. It never was higher than that. It has been sliding down slowly since that peak. And the decline actually accelerated in April with the collapse of another cryptocurrency called Terra USD. And many, many investors lost all they had invested in Terra USD. And that was contagion. It spread throughout the crypto markets, and all cryptocurrencies were hit by that. Just the Sunday before last, Bitcoin closed at $26,555 US. And that evening, so that would have been the 12th of June, a crypto lender named Celsius announced that it was halting all withdrawals and all transfers between accounts, effectively freezing $12 billion of crypto assets under management. This really propelled a decline in the value of Bitcoin last week. Monday, big losses. Tuesday, Coinbase, one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges in the United States, announced that it was laying off 20% of its workforce. They followed several other smaller exchanges that had made similar announcements. Then on Wednesday, or on Tuesday, the price kept declining. On Wednesday, Bitcoin price had a bit of a reprieve. The Federal Reserve Bank of the United States announced a 75 basis point increase in its benchmark rate, and that lifted the stock market, lifted the cryptocurrency markets, but it was temporary because on Thursday, Bitcoin's decline resumed, propelled by the 700-point loss in the Dow Jones on Thursday. And the losses continued through Saturday. So I've been getting Bitcoin quotes like hourly since I've been here in Jamaica. On Saturday, the price fell to $17,750 roughly. And that represents a 35% drop since the prior Sunday. So right now we're in one of those sell-off periods for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's had 4 of these sell-offs, big sell-offs of 70% or greater, and it's been more than a 70% loss since the November high. So why am I telling you all this? Well, basically it reminds me of a joke I heard at a conference a few years ago. How do you make a small fortune in cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin? Well, the answer is you start out by investing a large fortune. So now I'm not here to judge cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. We're just in one of these cycles, and I'm happy to share some of my learnings with you about cryptocurrencies. Trying to advance, hitting the green button. Back. Should I get some assistance here? It's not advancing. We'll resume and, oh, here we go. So in today's agenda, I'm going to provide you with a brief introduction into cryptocurrencies, provide you with some competing or polarized views on cryptocurrency that exist in the wider economy. Share with you then some key concepts. This is some of the learning part, the Bitcoin or blockchain 101 type learning in the second section. Section number 3, or market landscape, I'm going to share with you sort of a landscape of the different providers that offer Bitcoin services, and the deeper insight into how many cryptocurrencies there are out there, and that type of information. We'll then move on to an assessment of consumer awareness and adoption of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And we'll end it off with the discussion of cryptocurrencies and credit unions. And like I said, we do have some survey information of CCCU credit union members and also US credit union members so that you can sort of benchmark against US credit unions. Okay, next. Next. So what is a cryptocurrency? Well, cryptocurrencies are digital assets. They exist on the internet. They're created using cryptographic techniques that enable people to trade them securely. These cryptographic techniques are extremely difficult, if not impossible, to crack. Another key characteristic of cryptocurrencies is that they're decentralized, meaning that they're not issued by governments. They are not issued by banks or any other financial institution. Next. So I wanted to share with you some polarized views on cryptocurrency. These are not my opinions about cryptocurrency, but there are quite opposite views about cryptocurrencies as investments or as actually units of payment or money. So you have Warren Buffett here. He's the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, net worth of $118 billion. And he is okay, thank you. He is not a fan of cryptocurrencies. He says cryptocurrencies basically have no value. You can't do anything with it except sell it to somebody else. But then that person's got the problem, okay? Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you have Changpeng Zhao. Okay, he's the CEO of Binance, one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges in the world. His net worth is about half that of Warren Buffett's. So, you know, this is not some hacker in a garage or something like that. And Changpeng says, after attending my first Bitcoin conference, I quit my job. I sold my house, I dove in and never looked back. Always bullish on crypto. Now, let's take a look at some key concepts. This is the part of the presentation where we're just going to do the Bitcoin 101, cryptocurrency 101. But I wanted to raise some awareness. I know that there's been some developments here in the Caribbean region regarding central bank digital currencies. These represent fiat currency. They are not cryptocurrency because they are issued, stored, and regulated by central banks. I have on this slide Dcash, which is issued by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and it's distributed by financial institutions and approved service providers. And the exchange rate for Dcash and the Eastern Caribbean dollar is 1-to-1. And so it's just an easy, convenient method of payment in essentially electronic Eastern Caribbean dollars. Here in Jamaica, on I believe it was the 9th of June, Jamdex, Jamaica's central bank digital currency, became legal tender as well. So this region is actually trailblazing for the rest of the world in terms of these central bank digital currencies, but they are not cryptocurrency. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. Cryptocurrencies are based on distributed ledgers. Okay, so there is no central body that controls these cryptocurrencies. The database is decentralized. In other words, it's distributed across several computers or many computers. And the industry likes to call each computer on the network a node. And so the ledger that keeps track of all the cryptocurrency transactions is stored on each one of those nodes. And if the ledger needs to be updated, say there's a transaction that needs to be added to the ledger, that is done at each node. And each node does the update independently. There is no bank, central bank, or anybody telling the nodes to update the ledger, okay? So that's a distributed ledger. The blockchain is a form of distributed ledger technology. The blockchain, basically information is stored in the database and it's distributed and continually reconciled by the computers on the network, okay? And the data in the database are contained in something called a block, okay? And each block contains 3 essential elements. You have the data of the transactions, and for the Bitcoin blockchain, each block contains, on average, about 500 transactions. So you have those data on those 500 transactions. You have a unique fingerprint of all the data in the block, which we call the hash, and then a hash of the previous block's data. So let's go through this example on the bottom. We'll call the block on the left the Genesis block, okay, because there is no previous hash. It's all zeros, okay? So you have a timestamp on that block. You have In this case, all zeros for your previous hash. And then you have this unique identifier, the purple row there. That's called the hash, and that's the address for this block of data. Moving on to the next. So after these 500 transactions get processed by the blockchain, we move on to a new block with 500 transactions. Again, timestamp. This time the previous hash is pulled in from the Genesis block, and a new hash is assigned to the block, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and so what's interesting about this is by including both the unique identifier, the hash, and the previous hash, it's really hard to try to falsify or hack into this because you have to get those both right. And these are cryptographically generated code. Pulling these numbers out of a ledger or something like that. They're just being automatically generated. And so it's very difficult to hack into. All right, stable coins. I was telling Andre that these are ironically named because they are creating a lot of problems right now for cryptocurrencies. They are, in theory, they're supposed to address the volatility of Bitcoin because the blockchain is linked into the sensor data, the claim payment is automatic. We're still a ways off from that, but that's the use case that I think is going to really take off. Also, some other use cases, digital rights management. Think about this: you like a song, and every time you listen to it, that's a triggering event and triggers payment. You're paying out of your Bitcoin wallet of a couple fractions of a Bitcoin to listen to that particular song. So that's an example of digital rights management using smart contracts. We have the last concept that I want to share with you is decentralized finance. And this is one that I'm a little nervous about because honestly, we work in more traditional financial institutions. And this is the part of the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry that is actually coming for us. And that is DeFi is an umbrella term for a new internet native financial system. And the goal of DeFi is basically to use blockchain technology to replace traditional financial intermediaries, such as banks, credit unions, insurance companies, stock exchanges, et cetera. And so I list some examples down there. You can see on the lending side, banks and credit unions already have competition from Aave and Compound Finance. Those are examples of blockchain-powered lenders that are generating or already lending to consumers. All right, let's move on to the market landscape. In this section, we're gonna kind of give an overview of the industry, the players in the industry, et cetera. But let's start off and look at a timeline here of sort of the evolution of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, et cetera. And we all think of cryptocurrencies being established when Bitcoin was launched, but that's not the case. 10 years before the launch of Bitcoin, we had a computer scientist named Nick Szabo. He proposed a cryptocurrency called BitGold. Now, he never launched it. They didn't, think about the computer power back in 1998 versus 2008. So they never launched it, but the vision was already there, okay? Fast forward to 2008, that's when Satoshi Nakamoto wrote the white paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, okay? Satoshi Nakamoto is a pseudonym. No one knows who Satoshi is. A lot of people think it might be Nick Szabo, but he vehemently denies that. But anyway, the concept of Bitcoin was born late 2008 in this white paper, and it actually launched in January of 2009. Satoshi Nakamoto actually processed the very first Genesis block. They call it the Genesis block of blockchain data. And at that point in time, a Bitcoin was worth less than a penny, okay? Fast forward to 2010. So that was 2009, the first Bitcoin trades occurred. Fast forward to 2010. That's when the first physical purchase of a good or service was made using Bitcoin. A gentleman in Florida used 10,000 Bitcoin to buy 2 pizzas from Papa John's. All right, now if we look at Saturday's valuation, which was a low point of $17,800 per Bitcoin, that means that this person, if they would have held on to the 10,000 Bitcoin and not had the pizza, they'd have $178 million of net worth. So pretty amazing in terms of pizza now or 178 million in 10, 15 years. Another key milestone was the collapse of Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox was one of the first Bitcoin exchanges established. It was based in Japan, and right before the collapse of Mt. Gox, Bitcoins were worth about $32. So they increased in value from under a penny to $32 by 2011. And then Mt. Gox got hacked, and multiple thousand Bitcoins were stolen in that hack. And the value of Bitcoin went from $32 down to a penny overnight. Okay, so that was one of the first times that Bitcoin saw one of these 70, 80% declines in value. Some other key highlights we see in 2014, the stablecoin Tether was launched. We also see the first NFT being launched. It was a video that was created by Kevin McCoy and Anil Dash, and that video was represented or stored in an NFT. Okay. In 2015, we had the launch of Ethereum, upon which all the blockchain or smart contract technology is built, and a lot of the NFT technology. In late 2017, we had another collapse in the value of Bitcoin. It had peaked at over $19,000 in late 2017, but then collapsed in value again. And that was a long bear market. So from late 2017 to all through 2019 and most of 2020, it was a bear market for Bitcoin. But then in late 2020, the value started going up. And that was the most recent run up that we've had. That started late 2020. It peaked in November of last year at $67,583. Also in 2021, we had China ban both Bitcoin trading and mining, and El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. So some big changes there at the government level around Bitcoin. And then I bring you to the near present. April, we saw the collapse of Terra USD, which I just described. But big news for credit unions. In February of this year, Unifi Federal Credit Union became the first credit union to offer cryptocurrency services. They're enabling their members to hold, buy, and sell Bitcoin. Okay. So this slide is totally out of date based on recent developments, but you get the idea that market capitalization for all cryptocurrencies, all 10,000 of them, peaked also in November at $2.95 trillion. Now, I checked on this last night. The total market capitalization has declined from 2.95 trillion down to below 1 trillion. So it's a little over 900 billion now in valuation. So a lot of wealth was crushed in this last downturn. Look at who some of the leading cryptocurrencies are. We're looking at this in terms of the share of market cap. And like I said, there are over 10,000 cryptocurrencies out there across the globe. Many of them are worthless, absolutely worthless. But these, in order to sort of weight it by what they're worth, I'm looking at the market capitalization of each one and looking at the share of total. And Bitcoin accounts for about 46% of the total market capitalization for cryptocurrency. Ethereum is the second largest, and they're about 18%. Tether, who we're watching right now to see if they're in trouble, is about 6%. Another stablecoin, USD coin, they're at about 4%. BNB, XRP, et cetera, it goes on down from there. All the little ones together, so, the roughly 9,970 or 80 remaining cryptocurrencies account for about 15% of the total market cap. Okay. Okay, let's focus on Bitcoin. Since they're the biggest, I think it's it's good to go through sort of a case study for one of these cryptocurrencies, and we'll take a closer look at Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has several key characteristics that kind of set it apart from other digital currencies, including the central bank digital currencies. First of all, it's trustless. What do I mean by trustless? Well, in a transaction, a typical transaction between traditional financial using traditional financial institutions, the two parties have to clear the transaction through a trusted intermediary, like a credit union, a bank, a payment network. With Bitcoin, it's completely trustless. You don't need that intermediary because the blockchain is distributed. It's also permissionless, meaning anybody can download and install Bitcoin software and begin trading, buying, selling, etc. There's digital scarcity is another key characteristic. So Bitcoin algorithmically is capped at 21 million Bitcoins. So once all 21 million are unlocked, there will be no new Bitcoin created, okay? So it's, that a lot of Bitcoin advocates point to that's why it's worth something, because it is capped. It's open source, meaning that the underlying code is available to the public to inspect and, ensure that it's not biased towards any one party or other. It's censorship resistant, meaning that the decentralized network makes it nearly impossible to suppress, access, or deny transactions. China is testing this. This may no longer be a characteristic of Bitcoin because of this denial of access, denial of transactions within China because of their ban. So we have to keep an eye on that if that still holds true, if people in China are still able to trade and hold Bitcoin. And then there's immutability, the final characteristic, and that means that it's impossible for any entity, whether it's a government, a financial institution or corporation, or a criminal enterprise for that matter, to manipulate, to replace or falsify any data on the blockchain. It's really, I don't think it's been done to hack in and change the blockchain. You would essentially need to gain control of 51% of the computers attached to the network to be able to do that. No one's done that yet. All right, we've talked about the Bitcoin price trend. This just graphically illustrates the slide since November. We're bouncing around somewhere a little bit over $20,000 now. So that the red line should be a little bit lower than that if this were to go out to present day. But you get the drift. We're in a downturn for Bitcoin, and it's even been worse for other cryptocurrencies. Some of you may have heard of Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining is the process through which Bitcoin transactions are verified and recorded to the blockchain. And I created this example here for you to get a sense of the process to clear a transaction through Bitcoin. It's a lot different than swiping a credit card, I'll tell you that much. So Sue wants to buy a bicycle from Bill using Bitcoin. Don't ask me why, but she's decided to use her Bitcoin. And then Sue, she uses her private key and signs a message with the number of Bitcoins and Bill's address requesting a transaction. This is then this request is broadcast out to the Bitcoin network, and Sue's transaction request is then bundled into a block with other transactions. Remember, earlier I was saying a block contains roughly 500 transactions. This would be one of the 500 transactions in that block. The block is then broadcast to all the Bitcoin miners on the network, Bitcoin miners have very powerful servers, okay? And they need these servers because they're in competition with the other miners. And the miners then use these powerful servers to validate Sue's transaction request using cryptographic algorithms in a process that we're calling mining here, okay? And the first miner to validate the new block using these algorithms receive as payment for, or reward for being the first one there, a partial Bitcoin as payment for clearing that transaction. And that is how new Bitcoin is uncovered. That partial Bitcoin isn't coming from the block of Bitcoins that they're processing. It's a new Bitcoin that's been created, okay? So once that transaction or that block has been validated, the transaction is completed, the new block is then permanent and it's immutable basically. It can't be changed and it's added to the blockchain. Bill then receives his payment in Bitcoins from Sue and he ships the bicycle to Sue, okay? This is a really simplified version of what is actually happening behind the scenes. But you get the sense there's a financial incentive there for the miners to do this heavy processing to validate these transactions. And once that transaction is validated, all the servers on the that are keeping copies of the Bitcoin ledger are updated with that block. Okay. So I alluded to super powerful servers during the talk about Bitcoin mining. Well, it is very energy intensive. And it's interesting, that I'm following a talk on climate change because look at the power consumption for Bitcoin mining. If you considered Bitcoin a country, its power consumption would exceed that of the Czech Republic, of Chile, of Greece. It's incredible amount of electricity being burned up by these Bitcoin mining servers. And I just brought that out because there's a whole part of the blockchain industry now trying to figure out ways to get around this by less energy intensive mining efforts. So over the years, a blockchain and cryptocurrency ecosystem has sprouted up. There are over 4,000 startups, or some of them have grown into sizable firms now, that serve the cryptocurrency and blockchain industries. The market map here shows some of the major categories within the industry. I'll call your attention to a few of these. So in the middle top are the exchanges. This is where people enter the Bitcoin market or exit and exchange their US dollars, Jamaican dollars, Eastern Caribbean dollars into Bitcoin. Okay, so it's through these exchanges that these transactions are occurring. Or you could go from one cryptocurrency to another at these exchanges. You have the custody and wallet services. These are the providers that allow people to store their Bitcoins or other cryptocurrencies. The biggest one in the US right now is Fireblocks. You have the NFT startups. I mentioned OpenSea. That's the largest NFT marketplace out there to buy NFTs. They're listed down there as well. We have blockchain powered payments companies. On the lower right, we see DeFi startups. So Aave, that lender, is still there. The one that I think you might be most interested in, however, is the lower left, the institutional crypto services. NYDIG is the company that's knocking on US credit union doors right now to give credit unions the ability to allow their members to hold, buy, and trade Bitcoin. So they're really going great guns in terms of promoting their service to US credit unions right now. All right, here are the top 10 crypto firms in North America and the Caribbean region. We see Coinbase is, by valuation, the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the United States, a valuation of $65 billion. FTX is also another really large cryptocurrency exchange. They're based in the Bahamas. draw your attention to Alchemy. There are 4 down. Alchemy is a startup that allows people to create new applications using the blockchain. So the blockchain, like I said earlier, isn't only about powering cryptocurrency transactions, but you can do things like, create smart contracts and things like that. So if you're an insurance company and you want to, start building smart contracts, policies that are smart contracts, you might hire somebody like Alchemy to help you on that journey. Also, Bullish Global, they're another example of a cryptocurrency exchange. They're based in the Cayman Islands. Okay. So these crypto and blockchain services are growing, they're going into the mainstream more and more. We're seeing out of the 100 largest banks globally, 55 of them have implemented some sort of blockchain technology. And as I mentioned, many banks, credit unions are looking at providing custody services for virtual currencies or cryptocurrencies. And the graphic on the right shows you some of the big names in the financial services industry are either considering or already have some crypto offerings on tap for consumers and investors. Okay. Finally, there are risks to cryptocurrency holders. A lot of people say that holding these cryptocurrencies is very risky for consumers, and I would tend to agree with them. Not necessarily because of the these wallet providers being more dangerous or whatever than or risky than a traditional financial institution, but there's a lot of scams and schemes out there that are taking advantage of crypto holders. There was one, have been breaches. I don't deny that. So the hackers breaching third-party wallet providers, that has happened. But that's also happened with banks and credit unions. One of the biggest hacks of a cryptocurrency exchange happened to Binance. Remember Changpeng Zhao at the beginning of my talk? His cryptocurrency exchange was hit by a hacking attempt, or a successful hacking attempt in 2019, where 7,000 Bitcoin were stolen. At the time, they were valued at about $41 million. Draw your eyes to Crypto Pump and Dump on the right side at the top. That's when the founder of a cryptocurrency or somebody who's purchased a lot of positions early on in the life of a cryptocurrency really talks it up. They go on the speakers network, they tweet about it constantly, using social media to really promote that cryptocurrency. And as new investors are piling into the currency and the valuations go up and up and up, that those people then sell their positions without ever disclosing that they have a position in that specific cryptocurrency. And so that's the dump, when the person who's been talking it up all of a sudden sells it. And while the regulations are a little bit unclear on that, there was an indictment. John McAfee, I don't know if you're familiar with McAfee antivirus. John McAfee was indicted for a pump and dump scheme involving Dogecoin. But unfortunately, he passed away before it actually went to court. So, that's something that the regulators are definitely keeping their eye on. And then finally, I want to draw your eye to ransomware. Ransomware is where hackers using, social engineering techniques gain access to computers, load software into those computers, lock them up, and demand payment in cryptocurrency to unlock the computer. And cryptocurrency is the payment of choice for ransomware hackers, simply because it's very difficult to trace where those Bitcoins, where that Ethereum currency is going. All right, so let's move on to consumer awareness and adoption. We'll fly through this really quick. This is a really excellent resource, Chainalysis. As I was doing this report, I was struggling because everything that I have access to back in Madison, Wisconsin is USA focused. So I'm so glad I learned about this Chainalysis Global Crypto Adoption Index. It's based on they base their index score on total crypto activity, the trading activity of non-professional users, and the peer-to-peer exchange volumes. And so using those three metrics, they come up with an index to figure out which countries have the most crypto adoption or activity. Vietnam is by far and away the #1 adopter of cryptocurrencies. And I was really scratching my head, like, why Vietnam? Like, they're head and shoulders above any other country. And it's because of the utter lack of investment alternatives for the people in Vietnam. So you have these entrepreneurs who have their own businesses, and they have nowhere else to stick their idle cash in terms of investments. There's not a stock market, nothing like that. So that explains Vietnam. But we have high adoption rates in India, in Pakistan. You see the USA has a pretty high adoption rate. Venezuela, Ukraine, Great Britain, Nigeria, and Kenya. Those are some of the leading adopters of cryptocurrencies. Actually, nope, we're missing a slide. Somehow that, we omitted a slide somewhere, but I'll talk a little bit about Caribbean Caribbean adoption statistics. So the Jamaica and the Dominican Republic lead in terms of cryptocurrency adoption. You know, their index values are roughly 0.03. So they're a little bit, you know, about 25% of the adoption rate of, say, the United States, but it's growing, and it's growing rapidly here in the Caribbean region. Unfortunately, chain analysis doesn't have enough data on a lot of the different nations in the Caribbean, but I know that, you know, even Cuba has some cryptocurrency adoption. And so, you know, their index value, I believe, was 0.01. So that gives you sort of a benchmark. All right, in terms of consumers' familiarity and with different types of investments in the United States, cryptocurrencies fall mid-pack. So this was an interesting study asking Americans with their familiarity levels of different kinds of asset classes that you can invest in. And cryptocurrency actually beat commodities, ETFs, and private equity. They do trail, you know, the traditional investments of stocks, mutual funds, and bonds, but that's actually pretty high awareness levels. These awareness levels are being driven by phenomenal amounts of advertising around, oh, here we go. These somehow got mixed up. So there you go. You can see the Caribbean credit unions, Trinidad, Tobago, and Bahamas, Barbados, Cuba, and Haiti at 0.01. Sorry about that. I don't know how they got mixed up. All right. Yeah, this whole section is a little bit mixed up. Anyway, US consumers, they have high awareness and low usage levels of cryptocurrencies. Pew Research last year published a really interesting study on you know, consumers' usage behaviors and ownership of crypto. And roughly 9 in 10 Americans are aware of cryptocurrencies, but only 16% say that they've invested in, traded, or used a cryptocurrency themselves. Okay. This section's out of order, so forgive me. The US crypto ad spending in the United States has been phenomenal, as I mentioned earlier. So this has really lifted up awareness levels. So that's why we see 9 out of 10 Americans aware of cryptocurrencies. And the Super Bowl is a good case study in how that spending is taking place. We have Coinbase at the very top here. They advertised during the Super Bowl, and all they had was a QR code that bounced around the screen. There was no voiceover, no nothing, okay? And as a result of that one ad, which cost them millions of dollars to place, they had a 309% increase in the downloads for the Coinbase app. Two other crypto exchanges, eToro and FTX, also advertised during the Super Bowl. They saw 130% plus increases in the downloads. So you know, these crypto providers are investing a lot of money in advertising in the States. Another way that they're promoting crypto is in buying the naming rights for different stadiums. So for example, you see here the Staples Center where LeBron James plays, where the Los Angeles Lakers play. That was renamed late last year into the Crypto.com arena. Okay? And this targeting of advertising during sporting events is no coincidence. It's because the ownership and the purchase and the trading is being driven by younger males in the United States. You can see here the maroon column, 43% of 18 to 29-year-old US males have said that they've invested in or traded cryptocurrency. That declines to 30% for 30 to 49-year-olds and down all the way to 7% for 50-plus-year-olds. Females exhibit a similar downward slope based on age, but their ownership levels are far lower than male. Okay, so by advertising during sporting events and things like that, the crypto providers are trying to influence that 43% group and grow that number. One thing that the Pew study did show, though, is income is not a significant driver of crypto ownership or usage. You can see the ownership and usage rates for upper income, middle income, lower income. They're roughly the same. There's no statistically significant difference in these numbers. All right, moving on to cryptocurrencies and the credit union response. I don't pretend to know anything about regulation of credit unions in your nations. So I don't know, I can't convey to you what's permissible, what's not permissible. You'll see in my questions at the end, I'm recommending that maybe you look into that. But in the United States, a letter was issued by the NCUA, the US credit union regulator, titled The Federally Insured Credit Union Use of Distributed Ledger Technologies. And NCUA basically gave permission to credit unions to partner with third-party providers to offer crypto services. Of course, as you can see in the middle there, you need to conduct the necessary due diligence when choosing a platform, and you have to actually ensure that the activity that the third-party providers providing is permissible. It's a permissible activity for credit unions in the US. But yes, they did after the fact, because you'll remember, Unify Federal Credit Union started offering crypto services in February. They led the US regulator. The US regulator hadn't issued an opinion yet. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning, we did do a survey of CCCU member credit unions. And earlier this year, driven by all the turmoil in the credit union or in the cryptocurrency market, we did a survey of US credit unions. So I'm going to be sharing some results of both surveys for you. This first one is the familiarity with cryptocurrency and blockchain concepts. These are CCCU member credit unions only. And you can see, if you're looking at the blue and the green, that means that the respondent knows a little about cryptocurrencies or knows a fair amount. And the highest percentages were focused on knowledge around blockchain, cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin, where knowledge levels were trailing a little bit was on Ethereum, NFTs, and stable coins. Now, earlier I was talking about the advertising of cryptocurrency in the United States. US awareness and familiarity levels are significantly higher, but it's because they're spending millions to educate us about it. Okay, attitudes about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. I asked both Caribbean credit unions and US credit unions the same question here. Presented several different statements and asked the respondents to indicate their level of agreement with the statement. And we saw the biggest difference between US and CCCU credit union members on the first two statements. So cryptocurrency investing is too risky for a typical credit union member. 56% of US credit unions agreed with that. 44% of the CCCU members agreed with that. Second one was blockchain technologies have the potential to create new revenue streams for credit unions. US credit unions, level of agreement was 49%. CCCU members, it was 40%. There was very little difference on the remaining three statements. The levels of agreement were nearly identical. Cryptocurrencies have the potential to share new revenue streams for our credit union. So that's a little bit different than the previous statement. One asked about blockchain, the other asked about cryptocurrencies. The next one, developing cryptocurrency offerings or solutions for members is too risky for credit unions. Low 40s for both US and CCCU member credit unions. And then finally, cryptocurrencies have not achieved mainstream adoption. You know, very close alignment there between Caribbean credit unions and US credit unions in the low 50% range. This, so unfortunately, the survey tool I used for the survey of CCCU members didn't allow for open-ended responses. I would have loved to have done that, but it just didn't let me do that. But we were able to do that with US credit unions because I had a market research company do this for us. And we asked verbatim questions and asked, like, why are you interested in offering crypto services to members? And this is a CEO of $1 billion plus credit union. And he or she said, you know, we see this as an option to gain new members and retain existing members, especially the younger demographics. Our legacy members and mid-aged members might not see the need. However, we have to look out into the future for what the next generation of members demand of us to remain relevant. So it's all about remaining relevant and catering to the needs of the younger members coming on board. All right. We also asked credit unions about their approach to cryptocurrencies in 2022. The majority of credit unions, both in the US and in the Caribbean, indicated that they are not currently planning to research cryptocurrencies in 2022. 37% of US credit unions indicated that they will research them or pilot test a solution in 2022. 0% of Caribbean credit unions indicated that they were going to pilot test or research these solutions. Interestingly, 2% of CCCU members indicated, so that was 2 credit unions basically, indicated that they have already deployed a solution. And I think the results are really telling here. We have a lot of don't knows with the CCCU member credit unions. I think there's an awareness building phase, an education phase that you know, the US credit unions, by virtue of all this advertising and promotion in our market, you know, the US credit unions awareness levels are probably a little bit higher, and so their plans are a little bit more solidified. We're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. I think there's a wait and see kind of approach. That's my interpretation. If you differ, you know, I'm all ears. Finally, or close to finally, for those credit unions that did not have plans to research cryptocurrencies in 2022, we asked them their likelihood of actively researching crypto in the next 3 years. And on the left side, we see the CCCU member credit unions. 41% indicated that they are at least somewhat likely to research cryptocurrencies, you know, over the course of the next 3 years. Compare that to 36% for US credit unions. We also asked the specific approach that they would consider. And given that, you know, a lot of credit unions are taking this wait and see attitude around cryptocurrencies here in the Caribbean, we saw a lot of gray bars there. That's the don't know. You know, so I think there's, like I said, an education, a learning phase that many credit unions will need to go through before they make firm plans. But we did see 2 credit unions indicate that they were taking 3 different approaches to cryptocurrency solutions or use cases. These 3 are verifying member identities using the blockchain, near-time real payments using the blockchain, and funding new accounts with cryptocurrencies. In the US, we see a different picture. Again, a lot of awareness building, a lot of advertising has taken place, and so plans are a little bit more solid. The number 1 use case is enabling members to buy, sell, and hold cryptocurrencies. You see 68% of US credit unions are actively researching that, and 23% are pilot testing that. Other use cases that are, a third of US credit unions or more are researching include near real-time payments using blockchain technology, verifying members' identities, funding new accounts using cryptocurrencies, and banking services delivered to cryptocurrency firms. So a B2B kind of angle to the cryptocurrency developments. So as I've already indicated, credit unions in the US are already rolling this out. I'm picking on Unify Federal Credit Union simply because they're out in the marketplace talking about this, but there are others. I would say that we're talking less than 20 credit unions today offer these services, but it's growing. And the CIO, the Chief Information Officer at Unify Federal Credit Union, Greg Glosson, he gave the following rationale. By offering the ability to trade in Bitcoin, Unify brings a substantial new product. It was competitive pressure that drove Unify to adopt cryptocurrency services for their members. So in closing, I have some questions for you to consider. I'm not going to provide you with recommendations because I don't deign to understand your credit union's individual situations. But this is food for thought as you start thinking about cryptocurrencies. So do cryptocurrencies have long-term value? Will they be around in 10 to 15 years? Will growth in consumer demand for cryptocurrency and blockchain solutions be sufficient to support an investigation by your credit union of potential offerings? Which specific use cases or solutions are most likely to be popular with consumers in your country? Do regulations in your country permit credit unions to offer cryptocurrency or blockchain solutions? What restrictions exist? You saw Unify didn't wait for the regulator. They went ahead and did it, and then the regulator followed. I don't know how your regulators would react to something like that. So caution. Next, how well would cryptocurrency and blockchain solutions align with your credit union's mission? Are they sufficiently would be most attractive for your credit union in terms of the risk-reward trade-off? Which would be most unattractive? And then finally, how would your credit union obtain the expertise to offer cryptocurrency and blockchain solutions? Would you build in-house? Would you partner? Would you buy? These are important considerations. A lot of credit unions in the US, even if they have the resources to build, these developers who work on cryptocurrency and blockchain use cases, their salaries are enormous. And so, it's probably outside the realm for a lot of credit unions to build in-house. But I don't know, maybe there is a cottage industry of crypto developers we saw Bahamas had a crypto exchange. We saw a crypto exchange in Cayman Islands. So I don't know, there might be the capability here in the Caribbean to build yourself. So in closing, I'll just open it up. I thank you for the opportunity to share with you all the content on cryptocurrencies and blockchain. Any questions?
Charles Allen, Barbados. About 2 months ago, Binance had put a hold on withdrawals. At that particular time, they did not give an explanation. What are the issues that could occur that would cause Binance, to suspend withdrawals?
So I think today, and this is what people are looking for with in terms of Tether. They're afraid of a run on the bank, essentially. So these exchanges have reserves that back some of the currencies that they are offering. So Binance has its own stable coin. And if they don't have good collateral to back that stable coin, they could experience a run on the bank, i.e. with mass withdrawals. And so I suspect that's what we saw there. We saw that for sure last the night between June 12th and 13th, when Celsius, which is a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency lender, they suspended all withdrawals and all transfers between accounts for a very similar reason. Okay.
Please go ahead.
Hi, Carl from Jamaica, COK. One of the reservations that I have when it comes to the crypto thing is that of the risk of money laundering,
Yes.
right? Where that is high. What are the sort of guarantees that you have available, right? That can allow us to get over that hurdle?
That is a very good question. And I think that U.S. law enforcement authorities are struggling with that very same question today, because that is a vulnerability, the lack of traceability. That's why the ransomware hackers love cryptocurrencies so much. It's so difficult to trace. And yes, indeed, money laundering is an enormous risk, but it's really difficult to control, because if people are buying small amounts of cryptocurrencies to launder that money, and say it's under the U.S. limit of $10,000, it's very hard for the regulators to pick up on those transactions. And so I think the U.S. authorities are struggling with it mightily right now. I don't think there is a good solution that I've heard of anyway.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Alfred Noel from TWCU Trinidad. A question I've always asked, but nobody could answer it, right? There's this guy who invented the cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah.
And nobody knows who he is.
Right.
Right. And he has mined, or I could say mined, or created 21 million cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah, Bitcoins, right?
Who is to say that this fellow can't make more? And if he make more, who is he?
So I think you raise a really good point, but the open source nature of the software can't be changed, and programmers can look at that code, see if there's any backdoor for creating new currency. No one's seen a backdoor like that in the computer code. And so given the fact that the underlying code that powers Bitcoin is open source, anybody can. I think the risk of that is lower than other kinds of hacks and scams and things like that.
Because remember, the traditional currency world, they hedge the money to gold. And then sometime after, a president come and say, well, we're not hedging it again. And then the next one say, we're going to print more. So they print 3 trillion.
Right.
Right? So,
I understand the risk. I have not seen any research that would suggest that there is a backdoor in the software to create new Bitcoin.
Okay, thank you.
If I find like that, I'll be sure to let CCCU know, but I have not heard anything about
Well,
that.
probably time will tell.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yep, please go ahead.
All right, this question is actually from a participant using the Hopin platform online. This is from Sylvester Brown, who comments, when it is considered that money today is based on fiat system, a US law that canceled the gold standard only 50 years ago, as a comment. Question, how do credit unions, I'm assuming, respond to the widening view that fiat is, or will end, and crypto would be the new order?
I didn't catch that last part. Somebody was moving furniture, sorry.
How do credit unions respond to the widening view that fiat will end and that crypto would or will be the new order?
So I think that's a very, very good question, because I think this notion that fiat currency is on its way out, the lax monetary policy since the financial crisis of, very low interest rates, I think drove a lot of those perceptions that, they were debasing the currency by keeping rates so low. I think the latest, now this is just my personal opinion, the latest rounds of interest rate increases are going to turn that opinion around, because the 75 basis point increase in the Fed funds rate last Wednesday was sort of shock and awe for the market. We'll see who's right. I think the jury's still out on that. But I think as fiat currency, as central banks increase rates to defend their fiat currencies, I think we're going to see that opinion lessen and lessen over time. Any other questions?
So, are we still confused? Volatility, uncertainty, is it the future? The fact is, there are some U.S. credit unions who've taken the leap. And I
Yes.
think what we can do is continue to monitor those in terms of the response to their members, and continue to look at Bitcoin, because Bitcoin seems to be a roller coaster.
Yes, it is. A roller coaster, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
A very interesting topic, but one that indicates clearly there's still a lot more to learn about this, and a lot more monitoring to do. Very interesting to learn about the Cayman Exchange and the Bahamas Exchange existing. Possibly we can try to learn a little more about those, and also the fact that both Jamaica and the ECCB launched digital currencies. Now, just to note, those aren't cryptocurrencies. So those are pegged to their currency one-to-one, right? Whereas the blockchain and the Bitcoins, they can vary in value. These can't. But it's interesting that nations in the Caribbean have taken that leap to move into the digital space. So even in terms of that context, are we looking at that?
I personally think the innovation going on in digital currencies in the Caribbean, there's a lot of central banks across the globe, including the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States, that are watching to see how this, it's essentially a pilot test for central bank digital currencies. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
All right, so let's give Steve a round of applause and thank him for his research.
Thank you. Thank you.
Steve, thank you for making the trip down to Jamaica.
Thank you.
Right, I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yes.
Right. Takeaway messages. I've been asked to advise that the start for the next session is going to be at 2. They're going to start it on time. I think they're trying to bring everything back, in line with the program. So please enjoy your lunch and be here for the 2 o'clock start of the evening general session. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Yeah, it was I struggled with